Hi there, welcome back to IndyCar on the 6th of December. Forgive me for the rather sporadic nature of these programs, but it's getting harder and harder to find basically any kind of news which is positive for Scotland's cause. In fact, most of today's programme, unfortunately, is going to be extremely negative. If you've had any chance at all to read the newspapers or watch the television news recently, you will have seen nothing but bad news concerning Scotland, and that is, of course, a deliberate policy by the United Kingdom to bombard Scotland with bad news about itself. Now, unfortunately, most of the bad news that we're being bombarded with is actually true, and most of it stems from the defunding of the Scottish Government or the Scottish Parliament itself. Now, we already know that the British government has relaunched mass, I would say, hyper-austerity on basically an already vulnerable United Kingdom population, including ourselves. Now, the way in which the United Kingdom has chosen to make sure that independence is effectively crushed is basically to crush our will to actually keep wanting it. And they've effectively done that by using the most effective means in their entire armoury, which is basically to stop or to reduce the funding coming to Scotland. And that makes it impossible for the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government to continue to provide the kind of budgeting for its local authorities, for its health service, its police service, ambulance service, fire stations, schools and so on, that it actually needs to maintain where we are at the moment, the status quo. Now, you'll have read recently in the press that the Scottish education system's performance is starting to decline quite markedly against international metrics. Now, this is a worrying development because Scotland has traditionally had extremely high standards of education, and we tend to turn out young people who are extremely well educated, many of whom go to university and college, and almost all of them end up being useful members of society. The problem is that, basic skills like literacy and numeracy, arithmetic, maths, sciences are all in decline in the Scottish education system. You have to ask yourself, why is that? Is it down to the government, or is it down to the education system itself, or what is it? Well, it's many things, but like everything else in Scotland that's in decline, the decline has not been caused by Scotland itself. It's been caused by the defunding of all of its parliamentary, all of its local democracy. Everything has been defunded, and the Scottish Government is now faced with a black hole trying to make the country run on a £60 billion budget. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, but remember, we only get back 60% of what we actually get in tax. The other 40% is spent elsewhere south of the border. So we've always been in this cleft stick ever since the United Kingdom was formed, and devolution has made absolutely no difference to it. There were some, I suppose you might say, golden years in the last, 15 or so years that the SNP has been in power. Things were going reasonably well, and that was because the funding was stable. But of course, those days are gone. And although I would say defunding is probably the bluntest and most cruel instrument the United Kingdom can use, and it is a bit of a gamble to use it in this way, it's very, very effective. Because it depoliticizes the population. It's very difficult for people like you and I to stay politically engaged and keep fighting for our independence when we're daily struggling to get by on ever-decreasing amounts of money, because no matter how much we earn, inflation is always going to make what we're earning worth less, and so we end up poorer. And when our government is getting less funding and our local services are going to have to be cut, then that is further reducing the workforce. It's introducing more redundancies, more unemployment, more misery, more poverty, etc. The whole thing is a vicious cycle. And although the British state has introduced austerity across the entire islands on this archipelago for everyone involved in the United Kingdom and everyone under their control, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland included, the fact that there is such a much larger population in England in relation to the Celtic nations that we are basically just being lumped in with everybody else. Now, England has a bigger economy and it's more able to weather the kind of defunding which it's currently engaging in. However, Scotland is not. Scotland has to run on a fixed budget. It has to have a balanced budget. It cannot borrow. It can't overspend or underspend. It is stuck. And no matter what way Humza Yousaf slices this, he's always going to end up with a black hole of funding. At the moment, it's running at £1 billion. Now, that is £1,000 million a year short of where we should be. And that is money which should be going to our vital public services. The police are talking about basically retiring people early to try and get people off the payroll so that they can bring their costs down. Many local authorities in England are unable to actually make the required cuts. One in particular is apparently £300 million short and unable to find any more cuts to make it. And that means they're facing actually being taken in under control by the British government, who will then administrate that particular local authority. So things are going to go from bad to worse, even worse still, and it's just going to keep on going. And all the time that this is happening, the people of Scotland, who incidentally, their strength of support for independence has never wavered once, in fact is on the ascent again, it's beginning to climb again. We have to think about what is going to happen next. Our politicians appear to be powerless to do anything about this other than scoring a few cheap political points at Westminster in Prime Minister's question time. There's really nothing much they can do because devolution is basically power retained by London. And for all the use devolution is at the moment, it might as well not even exist. The only thing that it really provides is the illusion of some kind of democracy in Scotland, which allows us to self-govern to a very limited extent and on basically a pocket money budget, when we are probably the wealthiest country in the entire United Kingdom when it comes to resources. So what do we do about this? Well, the only option for us is for the people of Scotland to get together and to make their representations to a higher authority outside of the United Kingdom. And that needs to be international courts, the United Nations and so on. I've mentioned this route many times, and this is the way in which Salvo is intending to move over the coming months. And they are moving pretty fast on this, I have to say, and they will continue to do that. There will be representations and delegations sent to these institutions, but they need your help. They need you to sign up to become a member of Salvo and to become a member of Liberation Scotland, which is, if you like, the political campaigning arm of the organisation. So there are things that we can do out with politics, but as far as I can see, the politics of defunding, division, discrediting our individual leaders, both Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond, have pretty much had their reputations trashed by the United Kingdom in a variety of theatrical ways involving the police and the courts. Incidentally, when we're talking about Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond, I noted that Mr Salmond is planning still to sue the Scottish Government and most notably has named Nicola Sturgeon in his legal action. And it is this kind of division, which is precisely what the British state uses to keep our independence party divided, or parties divided, and we now have both the SNP and the ALBA at each other's throats. I've also heard now that the co-leader of the Scottish Green Party has decided to basically resign, citing burnout and disagreements and unpleasantness within the Green Party. So it appears that the political parties of Scotland which support independence are so busy collapsing and fighting amongst themselves, and they're not really campaigning for what the people actually want. And that means the people are going to have to take this into their own hands and actually start working to get things done outside of the UK, because it's very obvious that there is no internal political solution to this that can be achieved at all anytime soon. So the hope of independence is not going to be extinguished. The flame of freedom, if you like, the actual desire of Scottish people to get out of this is extraordinarily strong and tenacious, and it never goes down. It only increases. The more we are repressed and suppressed by the United Kingdom, the more we kick back and the more independence support rises. So I would hope to see over the coming months and years that independence support doesn't just stay static, but continues to rise. And as it continues to rise, that we start to engage politically ourselves, out with the internal politics of both Scotland and the United Kingdom, because they are a lost cause as far as I can see. There is nothing happening anywhere in Scottish politics that could do anything to rescue this. Neither the SNP nor ALBA have a concrete process for gaining independence. These are wish lists. These are things that they hope to do. The pledging negotiations with the United Kingdom if they win vote counts or seat counts. But the problem at the moment is nobody knows who to vote for in the next general election, and that's exactly what the United Kingdom wants you to think. So what we do in the next general election is obviously just to continue to vote for whichever independence party we support and hope for the best. But at the same time, we have to get behind Salvo and we have to get behind Liberation Scotland to deliver on the international delegations which need to be sent to these international courts and institutions, not just to plead the case for Scottish independence. We know it's there. We know we have our sovereignty. We have the documents which guarantee it. We have our constitutional documents. We have our founding documents. We know that the Act of Union did not extinguish any of that. There was no mention of the fact that our resources were open to exploitation by England. That was not included in the treaty, and the sovereignty of the Scottish people had to be guaranteed by the treaty. So the legal case is there, but we need to make this known to these international courts so that we get a ruling from the rest of the world which says that we are entitled to self-determination, and that any democratic event held in the UK or in Scotland at all which produces a majority for independence is enough for us to leave the United Kingdom behind and actually do what we are meant to be doing, which is configuring our economy to be a resource economy, an economy based on what we have at our disposal, which other people need, so that we can both supply our own needs with things like energy for our own people at the minimum amount of cost required to extract these resources, whilst at the same time whatever surpluses we generate can be sold onto the international markets to bring in foreign currency so that we can have our own currency again without having to go cap in hand to the Bank of England all the time. So the hope is still there. The flames of freedom are still burning, and even more so now that the United Kingdom is trying to repress us still further and force us further into poverty. I noted that Anas Sarwar, the leader of the optional identity mark known as Scottish Labour, came out with a statement just the other day saying that he thought that Margaret Thatcher was basically a destroyer of Scottish industry. Well, so do we all, Anas, but it's about time Scottish Labour grew a backbone and stood up to Sir Keir Starmer, who is very obviously a Thatcherite and very much more a Tory than a Labour leader. So doesn't matter what happens in Westminster, we know we're going to get more of the same. It's regardless of whichever way we vote. Even if we got 59 pro-independence MPs at Westminster next year, it won't result in independence happening because the United Kingdom will not negotiate on that basis. They will say it was just a general election, and they'd be completely right. It is just a general election. But that's why we need the international legal underpinnings that I'm talking about coming from the International Court of Justice, the International Court of Human Rights, the United Nations, the European Union, the Council of Europe, etc. The more of that support we have, the easier it is for us to say, no, we voted for independence parties, we're taking our independence and we're off. We would get the backing then of every other country in our quest to be recognised as a nation yet again. And remember, Scotland is in an existential struggle. I've compared Scotland a couple of times to Ukraine for different reasons, but essentially we are in an existential battle to ensure that Scotland as a nation continues not only as a nation within the UK, but as a nation itself, and has full self-governing powers, full borrowing powers, its own currency, and is not having to go cap in hand to England to ask permission to do anything at all. And that is where we should be. Anyway, that's the end of today's broadcast. Sorry it's a bit of a rant, but in this kind of programming, I feel it's important for me to be honest, and my honest opinion at the moment is politically in Scotland and the UK, trying to gain independence anywhere within these structures and institutions is pointless, because nobody is going to do it. The politicians in Holyrood are bound by their oath to uphold the union at all times, and therefore they cannot stray out with that. They're not allowed to do that because they gave an oath. It would be illegal for them to do that, for goodness sake. They can't promise it. And then you have all the MPs at Westminster, about 80% of whom represent English constituencies, so we're always outvoted. So we have zero chance at all of ever gaining independence through normal internal political channels. It's just not going to happen. It needs somebody with the backbone somewhere in one of the political parties to stand up and say, we are going to go for independence if we get a majority of the vote. But so far, nobody except Alba has indicated anything close to that. And even Alba's offer isn't complete. It does not provide a fixed timeline process which says if we gain a vote count majority, we will stop cooperating with the rest of the United Kingdom. We'll suspend the union. If necessary, we'll put it to a vote of the Scottish people to ratify it. But as far as we're concerned, our people have voted for independence. Trouble is, this isn't what we're hearing. And I'm not surprised we're not hearing it, because none of these politicians is allowed to do that. And so until we go outside of the UK, we're not likely to gain our independence via any means. Certainly, we're not going to get the backing of our foreign trading partners, European Union, America, or anywhere else in the world, unless we go outside of the UK to make sure that our legal case is cast iron and that the rest of the world accepts our right to do this. That's the only way I can see of getting this, and it's not going to be a shortcut. So I'm sorry it's a bit of a negative programme today, similar in a way to the last one I made, but on the other hand, what is the point of giving people false hope? I think we need to be realistic. This is a long road, and if we embark on it, we need to circumvent all of the internal politics of the United Kingdom, including our own Parliament, simply because it isn't capable of doing what we need it to do at the moment, not unless it gives itself the powers to do that, and I can't see that happening. Anyway, that's it for me today. I'll see you all again soon. Hopefully I'll be able to put together a more positive programme in the next few days, but right now it's pretty difficult. I was extremely disappointed by what happened to Scotland's ladies football team last night at the hands of England, and I'm not necessarily surprised by it, but I think it's disappointing. I'm pretty sure that our female football players are capable of so much more. But anyway, that's just football, and football is not politics. Football is not independence. It's just another negative story that the British papers can mock us with. Anyway, that's it from IndyCar today. I'll see you all again soon. Incidentally, I posted a temporary link on my page recently because a number of people have been asking how to donate. Yes, I still need donations. Yes, it takes time to prepare every programme, so anything you can afford, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. It helps me to keep making content. I'll return to your screens, I hope, in a couple of days. I'm going to try and put together something a lot more positive in the next couple of days. That's it from me today. Keep the faith, and I'll see you later in the week. Bye for now.